Hey, David.
Hey, how's it going?
Doing real good. How about you?
Oh, good. Good.
Very good.
Anyway.
Alright, yeah, sorry I missed our lesson
so
yesterday.
I sent you another really annoying replay.
Oh, did you send it today?
Yeah, just now.
Oh, okay. I can go ahead and download it real quick then. Let me get into my email real quick. And then I checked out the other replays you sent me, so... are you wanting to review those then, or...?
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea. Let's see. But yeah, let's do the easy ones first. So that I don't even know if we need to replay it, but the early Hellion push one, where he comes really early with Hellions.
Oh, yeah. Let's go ahead and open that up. There's a few points I want to hit.
I saw the gas. I saw the one gas, and then I don't know what I thought everything would come later, so I wasn't sure. I guess if I just drop a couple spines, and then I wasn't sure also how to micro the drones in the case where stuff is not coming out yet. I don't know.
Yeah, and this one was one of those where I kind of looked at it and said, no matter how well you micro your drones, you kind of just lost.
Right.
Because there was no spine crawler, there was no, you were actually pretty light on lings as well, and then there was no ramp block with your queens.
Right.
So, yeah, when, let me get to a few points here. Okay, so you see the gas, right? And given the current metagame, that already... When you see that gas, it's pretty much bam. Okay, I've got some Hellions coming. I would say that's going to be about 95% correct at Master League.
Okay.
And as you go down in League, obviously there's a few more variables people are working with. But I would say in general, you can just say, yep, that's Hellions. So, then the next thing to do is just get one Zergling over to his ramp to confirm that, and you play a little blind here. Your pool finishes, and
I put my Zergling in the wrong area.
Yeah.
Like I put it a little far out, so then I think he just ran outside the range of vision. Yeah, he ran right beside it.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that Zergling needs to be rallied right to his ramp. I would rather you lose that Zergling, seeing 3 Marines and a barracks, than that Zergling just sit there idle while Hellions run by. You know what I mean?
Right, okay.
Even if you don't get good information, I'd rather that Zergling go to use every time just checking up that ramp. Because if you would have checked up that ramp, you would have actually... Well, good old lower leagues. You would have seen 3 supply depots and an SCV completing the wall. So, I guess that point is not made. I wonder if you would have seen the barracks with a tech lab. That would have been really deceptive if you would have gotten up that ramp. But in general, you would have seen a factory and a reactor.
Well, I could have walked all the way in, right?
Yeah, I mean,
theoretically.
Theoretically, if he doesn't raise the depot, yeah, you could have just gotten all the way in, and you probably would have, just because he did not make a single Marine to do this. It looks like. So yeah, I mean, you would have at the very least gotten up to the top and seen Hellions kill your Marine, or kill your Zergling.
Right.
And then, okay, so let's assume we confirmed what was going on.
So,
what's that?
Hold on. If I scout the gas, do I immediately think, like, I dropped an early Roach Warren, relatively early, but should I have dropped spines too? Like, and where do I was watching one of your casts, and you put spines sort of on the edge in between the minerals on the base. Is that what you would recommend, or where would you put them?
How old was this cast?
I thought it was like yesterday.
Oh, like a stream. Okay, I thought you meant like a YouTube cast. Yeah. Okay, because I was that's pretty standard. I would say your first spine crawler is going to be a bit cramped because you don't have enough creep spread. Literally, the way I like to hatch first is the hatch goes down, the hatch finishes. It's a 15-16, so the pool finishes at the same time. I start 2 queens, and then I start a spine and a Zergling immediately. And that spine allows me to just make 1 set of Zerglings rather than 2 sets, which is more standard. And also, that means that by default, when Hellions show up, I already have some coverage. For starters,
you put the spine in your main?
No, it's going to be in your natural. Right when your natural finishes, you're going to drop it. And so that's where Abyssal Caverns is a little weird. And this is where a lot of Zerg players are vetoing this map, is the natural is actually surprisingly hard to hold because it's so far back. Once the creep spread is established, you've got a couple creep tumors down, then it's very easy to hold. But it's very precarious for this first 2 Hellions because you put it at the natural, then you got the ramp to worry about. You move it up, now they're going to start frying your natural. So I do recommend vetoing this map, but if you're not going to veto it, it means your queens need to be forward the second you realize he's got gas. I would say inject, pull them both forward, have them blocking the ramp, and then I would start a 3rd queen immediately to compensate for the missed injection at your main.
Okay. Huh. Okay. Yeah, I'm getting pretty close to vetoing this map.
It's a bad map.
Yeah, it's just annoying in so many different ways that.
Yeah, I mean you've got vertical. Like this could have played out with him just going, "Hey, tanks up the vertical. Oh, look at that! I've got elevator play and a really tight choke." You know, the vertical spawns for ZVT are just atrocious. And then the close positions aren't as bad, but I still don't like it just because the Hellions have such a short travel time.
Yeah.
So really, that's all there is to talk about on this one. You wanted to talk about drone micro a little bit. I guess we can, but generally drone micro is only going to come into play if they drop the Hellions in. But running the Hellions in, it just shouldn't happen. It should be something where you've got that queen wall up every single game.
Okay.
Even if you have to miss injections. I'd rather you miss injections and have to dump some minerals into extra queens or spine crawlers.
Then fry all your drones.
Then lose all your drones and have to GG at 7 minutes.
Yeah.
So,
okay. Good to know.
Volume down. I just realized Hellions are really loud. Okay. So let's just watch the micro real quick in normal speed. Okay, so you pull.
I've seen some games where Nesty will split up his drones or something like that. I mean, he lost anyway in that particular game, but sort of spread them all over the place.
Yeah, and that's something you can work on definitely. And yeah, this is what you're doing right now is exactly what not to do. Running in circles, lining them up. Like Day 9 would be watching right now, screaming, "He's lining them up!" So this is a perfect example of what not to do. Instead, treat it like banelings. When you split against banelings, you're going to want to run them all in one direction at first, and then split, or I should say treat them like you're against banelings. You're just going to slice off half, right-click, slice off half, right-click. Keep doing that over and over and over until eventually you have 20 drones in 4 to 5 different pockets, and that's going to help quite a bit. But not as much as it does versus banelings, just because Hellions have such a nice splash, and they don't die when they fire. So, but yeah, that's something you can practice on your own. You can literally just go into a map, very easy opponent, or in a unit tester, and make 20 drones, and then just practice splitting them. Just see how quickly you can get them into 5 to 6 different groups. And then once you've gotten relatively quick at that, then you can go ahead and wash, rinse, repeat against a micro trainer. For example, there's one, I think it's just called Micro Trainer. It's got like 30 different drills you can run, and one of them I find to be extremely helpful for Zerg players, ironically enough, and that's the Marine versus Baneling micro.
Oh, really?
Because Zerg players generally, like a Terran player, they get to Master and they know how to split Marines. Done. Like, there's just no Master level player, Terran player, who doesn't know how to split Marines, right? Well, the micro is identical for splitting drones against Banelings and Hellions. And the trouble with Zerg players is we are in those situations so rarely that we never have to learn it. You can go straight up to even Grandmaster and be subpar at your drone splitting.
Huh. Interesting.
So that's a great drill for you to run if this is something you want to do. Some players, though, will simply just line them up and let them roast, and they just try and never let the Hellions get in. That's an option too. Me personally, I like to let the drones keep on mining and focus all my attention on killing the Hellions. And I find that to be actually the best option in many, many cases.
Huh. Interesting.
In fact, what I tell people if they don't want to learn to drone split is there's two ways you can approach it. Either A, you see it coming in advance, and you have a wall already established. For example, you see a medevac filling up with Hellions, you know you're not going to be able to kill the Hellions before they reach your mineral line, so you transfer every Hellion, you just mineral walk him to the natural. He shows up, the mining is completely empty. Nothing in the base, he just loses the Hellions for free, or loads back up in the medevac and then has to juggle over to your natural. That's a circumstance where it's just fine to move them out, right? The other circumstance is he drops them in, you didn't see it coming, he's already in your mineral line, and you're going, holy hell, what do I do? That's the point you don't want to transfer them, because Hellions are faster than drones. All it's going to do is cause them to line up, and you're just
line them up,
give them a free roast. So at that point, if you look at your mineral line, it's already pretty well spread versus line damage. So why not just let him mine?
That's a good point. Wow, I'm thinking about that.
It's better than trying to micro and failing miserably.
Totally, yeah. Because he's right. I bunched them all up with that. Okay. So, I think that's all for that one.
Yeah, that one's easy peasy. At this point, it's just making sure you don't panic and actually, follow through with it, because you know it. Now it's just a matter of making sure you execute it.
Let's see. So there's another pretty easy one. I just did this today on Shakuras Terran T-Rex push. He comes rolling in with Marines at before the 5-minute mark.
Is this the one you just sent me?
And yeah. So this one, I almost feel like, because I didn't drone scout, which I tried not to do, but maybe I have to do that. But literally my scout link scout is going out, and they're crawling up my ramp. So the only thing I can think to do is either drone scout and see it, or immediately drop a spine with natural pops.
Okay.
And just help that.
By the way, I before I forget, I gotta say this stuff before I forget because I'm so scatterbrained. Would you mind if I upload our lessons to YouTube? Because every single lesson we do is like an FAQ. There's so many people who want to know these things, and since you're doing a lot of Q&A during our lessons, would you mind if I upload them?
We've been fighting a long
Yeah,
time.
that'd be fine.
Great, because people would get a ton out of these, so much more than my typical coaching, just because it's so, conceptual.
Right.
Okay, so you hit a 2-Rax, you didn't drone scout, your link scout showed up to see 4 Marines and 3 SCVs, something to that effect, I'm guessing?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
2 SCVs and 3 Marines with 2 more on the way, basically.
You are not alone.
Alright.
Now, if I had dropped a spine crawler, I probably could have dealt with it, I think.
Yeah, and that's where that by default always drop a spine crawler concept comes in, especially if you're not going to be drone scouting. I would say that spine crawler is the price of admission to not drone scout. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And it's the reason I started doing this is I saw an ST do it, and I'm like, okay, what is his justification? Okay, he knows his opponent isn't going to proxy 2-Rax because he's versus MVP, and MVP is just balls to the wall macro. Okay, so if it's not proxy 2-Rax, he needs a spine crawler either way. Everything else is going to need a spine crawler. And so he might as well just not drone scout, and with the minerals he saves, drop a spine crawler that he's going to need in 30 more seconds anyways.
Right. Okay.
So, it's pretty good. The only scary thing is, on the ladder, proxy 2-Rax does happen. And if you start to run into cheesy players repeatedly, take note of them. It should be something where you literally go, Picklick, he always likes to cheese. I legitimately know when I see Picklick, he's going to pile on me in cannon. Every game. And that's the kind of thing you can keep track of.
Okay.
Okay, so let's watch what happened here and say, with where you're at now, nothing that you would have done differently. Where you're at now, how could you have handled it? So, 4:30, your lings are running down the ramp, and you see the Marines. Okay, the first thing is when your lings are in an egg, already rally that egg. Because these lings are actually idle for a bit, and if they would have continued moving, I'm guessing you would have actually seen these Marines. Where'd they spawn? Yeah, they spawned at your main. And he must have stalled for a bit. Let's take a look. They would have definitely seen these Marines about 10 seconds earlier, and sometimes that can make or break holding one of these rushes. Yeah, he sat there at his rally for just a little bit. Okay. I mean, it's nothing major. You would have literally gotten down your ramp rather than seeing him at the top of the ramp. But let's say instead this was one where he held back and waited for 5 or 6 Marines, right? That would have then made all the difference in the world if those links had been moving out sooner.
Right.
But still, this was going to give you a little more response time. It's more just a best practices thing, if anything. You always want to rally that first egg. Alright, and then reaction time on these first 2 speedlings. You need to babysit them. Like, it needs to be something where you show up, Fog of War disappears, you see 1 Marine, you pull back. Yeah, that's it.
Right.
Because even 2 Lings versus 1 Marine, if it's microed really well, can be a little bit of a tough sell. Like, you'll get away with it, you'll have 1 Ling left at half health. But if there's a second Marine, which there almost always is with this sort of thing, you're just going to automatically lose both Lings. And that already puts you in a position where things are pretty rough. So let's say the Lings ran down the ramp, and with those extra couple seconds, you just already knew what you were going to do because you've done this so many times. You immediately go up to your main, you box all your drones, and I would rather you overreact than underreact to this. So you box all your drones, you pull them down to your natural, and your queen pops, and then 2 Lings, 1 queen, and about 20 drones are fighting against 3 Marines and 3 SCVs.
Right.
Vastly different
And
situation.
then just try to get the surround on the Marines, basically.
Yeah. Go ahead and let the Lings chase the Marines while about half of your drones chase as well. Just micro back the weakened ones. All the while, the other half of your drones need to be getting a nice clean surround and helping that queen kill the SCV in bunker, because he's got 3 SCVs, so there's a lot of redundancy. You can't just kill the SCV and move on to the Marines.
Right. Okay.
And let's see how it played out for you. You didn't see
Oh,
it
it
as
didn't
early.
play out very well.
And then you don't pull the drones when you do see it. Looks like you're just going to try and deal with it with the queen and Zerglings.
Well, I pulled them, but they got stuck up on the ledge there.
Yeah,
I'm not quite sure what that's all about, but
it was just a bad
I
right
only
click.
pulled 5. I only pulled 5, so.
And you underreacted. The second you see 3 Marines this early in the game, it's being built off 2 racks. No way it can be built off 1. Anytime it's off 2 racks, for the time being, I would rather you pull all your drones. Now, that is, I'm going to tell you up front, that is an overreaction. If you were master level, if you were grandmaster level, well, obviously if you were grandmaster level, then be coaching you. But if you were at that level, you would say, depending on what type of 2 racks, I will pull X amount of drones. But for now, it's a lot easier for me to say, it's 2 racks, pull this many drones. Pull all your drones. And what happens is you're gonna deal with it, and then you're gonna call it a heavy transfer. You're gonna go ahead and take all those drones and put them on mining on your natural, because at that point you've probably lost a few. You'll probably have at most 16 drones. So you put them all on your natural, you rally both hatcheries to your main, good to go. You just go ahead and put 16 drones on your main via rally. And you
So I should have pulled the other queen too, right?
Yes.
I guess. But
yeah, even though she's going to crawl for a bit, this kind of rush always relies on sustained aggression, especially if they're expanding behind it. They're relying on you being so occupied with the bunker that you can't run Lings by and deal with the natural that they're taking. So pulling that queen down is mandatory, I would say, for the sustained aggression. And you're not going to miss the injection. In fact, you want to save the energy for transfusion, because your drones aren't mining right now anyway, so you're not going to be able to spend an injection. So I would even go so far as to say, if you've confirmed it's a 2 racks via their Marine count, this early in the game, 5.5 minutes, if there's 3 Marines, it's a 2 racks. If there's 2 Marines, it could be a 1 racks if they made it before 12. So yeah, pull all your drones, don't even inject either of the hatcheries, just keep the queens alive until they get up to 50 energy, and now they can transfuse, and that's pretty much when the push ends, because then your queens can really start tanking for a while.
I see. Okay.
But optimally, I'd like you cleaning it up when it's just 3 Marines, 3 SCVs, and a bunker under construction.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, once the bunker gets complete, it's not happy.
Yeah, it's I'd say it's I could put it into numbers, and I would ballpark it from my own experience and say when the bunker completes, without you killing the Marines off, you're probably looking at about a 30%, 40% chance of automatically losing the game from that point on.
Right.
Unless you just plan on the bunker finishing. I have seen some pro players who just say, you know what, I'm going to make a spine crawler, plan on the bunker finishing, not even pulled runs. That's another story. But that's like a very nuanced style of responding to bunker rush, so I wouldn't recommend that for now.
Yeah, I started with dropping a spine, but the extra Marines pretty much killed it off, and there's no way for me to hold them off.
Yeah, and I guess that's really all there's to it. I think Now that you know, grab all your drones, send them down to your natural right away when you see that many Marines. And now that you know to by default make that spine crawler, it's going to be a bit laughable.
I think that would have been exactly, yeah.
Because you're chasing his Marines away from the spine crawler while it's under construction, and at that point you have this nice little race going on where his spine crawler or his bunker is racing your spine crawler, but your spine crawler started first, so you know it is what it is. At that point, he's kind of build countered because you started that spine crawler so early. All right, so what do you want to move on to?
Let's do the three gate expansion. So when on both of these, I think are Netherrealm Crypt.
One is Netherrealm, one's Shattered.
One's Shattered. But both of these, I feel like. Let's do the Netherrealm one.
Okay.
I feel like I'm behind both in economy and in troops, and I don't know whether I should drone or cut drones and then I'm lost in terms of what I should do.
Okay, so this one I remember specifically because the entire game was dictated by one thing that you missed. There was something that it took you about 10 straight minutes to get. What was that? I don't know how recently you've played it, but...
Ling speed, maybe?
Yeah, Ling speed. It was... I was sitting there
bummer.
okay, he's having to make all these roaches, he's
Jesus.
worried about aggression, and all of that was because you didn't get Ling speed. Yeah. So, I kept looking up at the drone count, right?
Oh my god. Yeah.
And the drone count was always
that.
really low, right? Yeah, and the reason your drone count was low, there's a cause and effect that occurred here, right? So, you don't get link speed, which means there's no run-by threat for him, okay? He then sees you don't have link speed, and he goes, you know what, I'm going to cut probes for just a little bit and hit 2 warp cycles of sentries. You then see those sentries and get really scared and make lots of roaches. You then now are 15 drones behind him. He moves out just enough to scare you because you still don't have link speed, so he still doesn't have a run-by threat. Then he turns around and macros some more, and all of that happened because you didn't get link speed.
Oh my god. Wow.
So, it's so easy now, right?
Yeah, that's terrible. Oh my god. Alright.
Even in this engagement at 10 minutes, I don't think you had it, if I remember it. Yeah, you still haven't started it yet at 10 and a half minutes. That is one of those mandatory upgrades, and that's the reason why. Is because without a run-by threat, even if you plan on going roach heavies, without a run-by threat, he has nothing to keep him pinned.
Yeah, he's got literally nothing in his main base then, huh?
Yeah, he literally did not make a cannon. Like, he goes pylon, forge, pylon, worst wall in the history of walls, and then doesn't even make a cannon behind it.
Oh dear, wow, okay.
Yeah, I mean, 15, 20 lings with speed would have melted his entire base, and there would be nothing he could do about it except for try and warp in while at the same time holding his third or whatever stage of the game. I mean, there's so many stages of the game you could have run by, it's, uncountable, literally. Like, anything from 9 minutes when he first moved out of his natural to the end of the game, you could have done a speed ling run by.
Oh my god, my spire's finished before I start. Oh dear.
And so that's why whenever...
Wow. Oh my god. 16-minute mark is when I start.
And you legitimately should have had it done by about 6 minutes. So that's where I say it was about 10 minutes late.
Oh dear. Alright.
Okay, so this is, like I said, a pretty easy one. Actually, the next 3-gate expand one is the more difficult of the two to fix.
Okay.
Because I kept going, why is he making so many roaches? And then I realized all of your decisions to make units throughout the game were smart. They were good decisions. They were based on information you were gathering, like, oh my god, he already has 10 sentries. But everything that he did was because you didn't have speed. I was watching it from his point of view, just for a split second, and he realized you didn't have speed when you link scouted him. And then hit a couple warp cycles and moved out. Now, I don't know, maybe he planned on doing that all along. It's possible. But, either way, a smart player would just say he doesn't have link speed. There's nothing to pin me. Okay, so then what else was I going to mention? God, I just lost my train of thought. Oh, okay, so you're going for almost gasless. Your gas is a little bit later than it normally would be. Are you seeing Forge FE on Nair Zim a lot, or are you seeing almost always 3-gate expand?
Almost always 3-gate expand.
Okay, so...
Well, sometimes Forge FE, but it typically tends to be more 3-gate expand.
If you're going to open any gas-inclusive build like this, whether it's 13 pool, 15 gas, 14, 14, anything like that, versus Protoss, you're going to need to prioritize that metabolic boost very quickly. And, you know, so that's part of where I look at things and say, okay, this is kind of off, because your gas finishes and then you just don't saturate it for a minute and a half, 2 minutes. I guess about a minute and a half. And then, of course, the fiasco with you never getting your metabolic. But then the other avenue, I would say, that things can go is you expect a Forge FE, you open gasless, right? You go like a 13 pool expand or an 11 over pool.
Right. Yeah.
You see you see a gateway at the top of his ramp rather than a Forge at the bottom of his ramp. Immediately drop the extractor and go, I need metabolic boost. I mean, that's like, that just has to happen. Okay. Because if he 4 gates and you don't have metabolic, you're in trouble. If he 3-gate expands and you don't have metabolic, you're still in trouble because nothing can make him make cannons. Nothing threatens run by. So this needs to be something that happens every single game. And it's weird that you haven't forgot it other times that I've seen.
It's, you know what it is? It's when I've been playing like, you know, 1 or 2 very specific builds, and if it deviates from that or has to deviate from that, then I completely forget.
Yeah, and I've been kind of pushing you in a lot of directions you're not quite comfortable with, so that makes sense. Okay, so that one's an easy fix. It's just going to be a matter of remembering it now. So the other one, the 3-gate expand where you made too many drones and then he stomped on you. That one is a little tougher, but you're erring on the... This time you're erring on the right side. Arrow-ring? No, it's erring, yeah.
Erring, yes.
Arrow ring sounded terrible. I'm sitting there like, that can't be right. So, this one fell down to your scouting. And if I remember right, your metabolic timing was pretty good this time. But you didn't quite recognize the all-in. I don't think he was completely all-in if I remember right, but he definitely was going to hit a timing push and then expand. It was like, what, an immortal timing?
I don't remember.
I'm pretty sure it was. So Ling gets there. Gas is a little staggered, but that's fine. Whatever build you're comfortable with at this stage. Ling needs to be in front of the ramp, just so in case a stalker and a zealot decide to creep across the map, preempting a 4-gate or just some pressure. You need to know about that. So this Zergling needs to be at the bottom of the ramp. Okay, now we're confirming he wants to expand. All is well, and your drone count starts to skyrocket. This is exactly what should happen.
Right.
And this is what did not happen the previous game, because I'm guessing, well, part of it is you double expanded, but then the other part of it is you just, after the double expand was finished, he was able to show a lot of threats because of the lack of metabolic. So, take another quick third. Oh, and this was the one where he prisms in some zealots. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that really messed me up. Like, and the timing of that was just before I was about to start making lots and lots of roaches, right? So I think, like, if he had done that even, you know, a little bit later, I think it would have been fine, but for whatever reason, he did it just right.
Okay, well, the first thing I got to point out is I'm at 10 minutes, and you remember what I was talking about multi-tier scouting? You've got your tier 1 scouting, then you have to hit your tier 2 scouting as well, and many people, they neglect the tier 2 scouting. Well, the one thing that was common through all your replays is you always miss the tier 2 scouting, and about half the time you miss the tier 1 scouting because of what you've seen at the natural. Just because you see 3-gate expand does not mean you need to skip the tier 1 scouting. It just means you can afford to delay it a bit. So what I would have liked to have seen is optimally your first overlord creeping across the middle of the map over to the space between the 2 potential bases. Well, one used to be a potential base, but close positions isn't possible. But it needs to be over this little chasm, and you see 3-gate expand, you confirm it, great. Don't suicide yet, that's fine with me. That just means you delay it by about a minute or 2. Because if we go back to, let's call it 7 minutes, that should be pretty good. Let's see what we see. We see a robo starting an observer. If you see that, you're golden. You see a robo at 7 minutes.
So hold on. So if my first overlord goes to the close by air, I see he's not there. Then I motor him down to in between the other two. Then.
Yeah, and this was a stand. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's sort of in the lower left corner of the or side of this map. Then.
Yeah, you're going to go straight diagonal to the other side of the map. This was a standard scouting pattern when it was possible for people to spawn close positions. And really, there isn't much reason for this to not happen. Oh, excuse me.
Bless you.
There really isn't much reason for this to not happen still. So I would say, yeah, just your first overlord wants to go close by air and then immediately straight across the map to between the 2 expansions. The only time you're not going to do this is versus Terran. It's a bit dangerous because guess what? If they move out with any Marines, they're mid-map. When your overlord's mid-map, so you can stagger it a bit and kind of creep across still and get there after your Zerglings are out, or you can go ahead and just wrap around the corners. That's up to you. But versus Protoss, you should always have an overlord positioned in that chasm for a suicide.
And so 7-minute mark, roughly, or
yeah, I would say if you confirmed a 3-gate expand, 7 to 8 minutes is going to be a comfortable time for your Tier 1 scout.
Okay.
And at 7 minutes, you would have seen 2 gateways and a robo. I see that early of a robo, I'm thinking Warp Prism right away. I mean, it could be an immortal timing, but I'm definitely going to keep my guard up from the Warp Prism play. And so that's going to do a couple things. A, it's going to speed up your layer tech because you're going to need some mutas to deal with that Warp Prism. B, it might actually delay your third a little bit. If it doesn't delay your third, you're going to be aware that you need to be making units through the production of that third rather than drones. And C, it's going to mean that you're going to be very light on roaches. Because you know at the very least he has the capability to make roaches, or immortals, even if he doesn't intend to. It's going to be very easy for him to see a lot of roaches and then spam out some immortals via Chrono Boost.
So more link heavy then? I mean,
yeah.
Early on? Or?
Yeah, more speed link heavy early on. They're going to be able to intercept the Warp Prism better until your mutas are out. They're going to be able to deal with immortal-based play much easier. And don't get me wrong. Feel free to make some roaches, but just make sure you have a healthy link count to buffer the immortals for those roaches. If you were pure roach and then he makes 2 immortals, he probably wins the game.
Okay.
So, yeah, you missed that Tier 1 scout, and that's the first step to this that goes wrong, is you see that and immediately you can already start thinking there's going to be some Warp Prism play. So you take your third, and if I remember right, he drops in really well timed, like right as your third is finishing. But let's take a look.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next thing is whenever you take this third on Shattered, you're going to need an Overlord hanging out at the rocks. Now, your Zergling probably will scout anything moving across the map, but there's still the potential for him to creep along the edges, dodge the Zelnaga, or straight up just have a proxy pylon near those rocks and just warp in at the bottom of them and break the rocks, or have a proxy pylon. Well, no, he couldn't technically have a proxy pylon at the top without breaking the rocks, but you get the idea. He could potentially have a proxy pylon break the rocks. You just need to have an Overlord there, and that's the next step. To all this is, if you had a proxy pylon there, you would have seen the Warp Prism fly in. Your reaction time would have been quicker. What do you have right now? Well, unfortunately not enough. You have 1 Roach, 17 Zerglings, and 4 Queens. However, assuming he just wants to harass a little bit, which it looks like he does, 1 Roach, 17 Zerglings, and 4 Queens will hold this. It's going to be a bit precarious for a few seconds when you're microing the links, but you can hold. But then the other thing that's a bit frustrating here when looking at this is you could have held this by a mile if you didn't have 1,800 minerals floating.
True that.
I mean,
there's no macro hatch, which is a problem.
I don't care what you invested in. That could have been 1,800 minerals worth of drones, and you would have held this still. You know, you could have pretty much just A-moved your drones, lost half of them, and still been ahead of where you are now. So, yeah.
Yeah, I end up with so much minerals. Jeez.
Yeah, and that's whenever you have a replay where something beats you, the first place you need to look is your mineral count. If your mineral count, or gas, I suppose, but if your resource count in general is over 1,000, then that's the first thing you can say, that's why I lost to that. Especially this early in the game. By 10 minutes, I would love to see you at 300 to 400 minerals. But 1,800 is going to potentially lose every single ZVP you play.
Okay.
Okay, and then the final thing you can do for this is, since we saw an early robo, let's assume we hit that Overlord Scout at 7 or 8 minutes, we saw an early robo. That's the point. I'm just going to treat it like I saw a starport from a Terran player. I'm actually going to get a spine up in my main, just in case. I'm also going to preemptively make a spine on this creep spread over your third, and then waltz it over when the third finishes, just in case. And if these zealots, these 5 zealots, 6 zealots, they're having to deal with Zerglings, Queens, 1 Roach, and stop the spine crawler from burrowing, that's going to hold pretty well, even without the 1,800 minerals spent.
Right. Okay.
So, combination of those 3 factors, I think you would have taken no damage from this drop and moved into a very healthy macro game. And that has nothing to do with stopping droning, right? So that's the beautiful part about it, is that was all just healthy preparation. Alright, so we'll go ahead and move on to the other thing that happened here, which I consider to be kind of a butterfly effect, which was he comes in, cleans up some drones, but the big thing is he pushes eventually after he's already done plenty of damage. The drone kills, yeah, he got some drones, but you're still technically on even standing with him. And if you didn't have the minerals floating, you would be miles ahead. So I'm not worried about that if your minerals get cleaned up. 57 to 50 looks good. But then we have this push here, and this is where I was talking about previously. You're switching into pure Roach, even though he has a robo.
Right.
And that's exactly what I was talking about, is when you see an early robo, had you seen that early robo, you would have known that pure Roach play is off the table. At least until mutas are out. Once mutas are out, then you can transition back. But until mutas are out, he has nothing to motivate him from getting pure immortals. They're even okay against Zerglings, simply because they take a lot of hits. They've got 1 armor by default, if I recall. Yeah, 1 armor by default. So they buffer pretty well for Zerglings. And besides, Force Field should be making sure Zerglings don't make contact anyways. So they're not too terribly bad against all ground in general with their new 6 range. So yeah, I guess that's about it. This one was just kind of a series of occurrences that happened to make you feel outclassed and make you look outclassed, but in reality it was just these little small mistakes that compounded.
Okay. So, it looks like I got the Overlord eventually over there.
You did. It was probably your 7th or 8th Overlord, but you did get it there.
So, okay, so Overlord Scout, 7 to 8. Okay.
That's all she wrote for that one. That's, these are all really easy things. The trouble is remembering them all in succession.
Right.
And these are mistakes I still make. I still have times where I'm like, well, how did I supply block there? Oh, right, I forgot to drop my third, so I had 350 minerals rather than just 50 minerals. Things like that can happen. So it's just going to be repetition, and that's where, with the kind of coaching we're doing, the more notes you take, the better. But it'll be recorded, so you can re-watch it if you need to.
Good, excellent. Okay, let's do Terran 1. Terran, when do I cut drones?
Okay.
'Cause I feel like this guy does, I think this is just a pretty standard Marine tank push. But I don't know when I should stop making drones and start making units.
Yeah.
And I guess it could be scouting, but...
If I remember right, the Hellions did a great contain as well. If I recall, they didn't do much damage, but you pretty much had no means to scout him via ground, but you did not scout him via air. And so again, we're back to the missing the Overlord Scout at Tier 1. Alright, so the hatch goes down, looking good so far. We scout a barracks and a gas, so here's where we're already starting to blindly prepare for Hellions, just because we know that's what Terran like to do, especially on Nautilus. Hellions are just amazing with that wide open natural. Alright.
Yeah.
Zergling's a little out of position. By this point, I'd like it to be running up the ramp and confirming a factory, and had it ran up the ramp in about 6 minutes, it would have done just that. Seen a reactor, seen a factory, would have seen the first 2 Hellions pop even. So that right there, it's just the same thing as the previous Zerg versus Terran. Saturation is good. You're at 31 drones versus 23 SCVs. Now, here's where you're missing a mandatory Overlord Scout. At 6.5 minutes, 6 minutes more realistically, but 6.5 at the latest, I would like this Overlord here in the middle between your 2 bases to be flying in, checking what it sees.
Okay.
And it would have seen a command center going down, a barracks with a tech lab inactive, and a factory with Hellions. That's fine. All we're doing here is we're confirming whether he wants to expand or not. And he actually did want to expand, so that's great. Then the next thing that we need to confirm is whether he wants to push and then expand, or whether he wants to expand and then push. That sort of thing. Play defensive into 3 base, or apply pressure while taking his nav. And it turned out he wanted to apply pressure while taking his nav. The way this is checked for is, okay, first, hypothetically, you've flown in the Overlord, you see the command center, right? Next, you position a lane off to the side that is out of the way of the Hellions. So a perfect one for this would be the one at the Zelnaga. Once you realize he's going Hellions, you just kind of run it around. I don't know if you're on my stream or not, but a little bit of, I guess I can describe it. You basically run through your gold up top. He's running towards your natural. He's going to miss it because he's not going up top. You just wrap around to his 3rd, and now you're in a perfect position to check to see if he expanded and see what's going down in his natural with that one Zergling. And that one Zergling will die and pay for itself tenfold. So, what would you have seen? Let's say 8 minutes, okay? Let's assume you Overlord scouted at 6 minutes, and then at 8 minutes, you check with your speedling to see if he has in fact taken his natural. And at 8 minutes, you would have seen, I'm going to go ahead and just fast forward a bit, because your Hellion defense was pretty good. There's nothing really to critique there. 8 minutes. You would have seen, oh, there's no natural. Well, he has the command center. Why hasn't he expanded? So then you run up his ramp, and you're going to see the barracks has been swapped over the reactor. He's pumping out plenty of Marines. He has 1 siege tank. The tech lab is active. The factory is active. We can assume another siege tank is on the way with siege tech. And 1 barracks and a starport is on the way. Since his supply depot was down, you probably would have seen all of that. They typically aren't watching their supply depot when they're microing Hellions. So it's almost a free look at his entire base. So you're at 38 drones versus his 27 SCVs. At that point, I'm saying I cut until that command center goes to low ground.
I see. Okay.
And there you
so
have
it's really the timing on the expansion. That's the key.
Because even if he makes that orbital, that's not necessarily indicative that he's going to expand. I've seen plenty of Marine SCV all-ins that make an orbital. And they just use the mules to supply more Marines.
I hate that. I hate that so much.
It's pretty
I really
rough. Were you watching my stream earlier when I held that natural? This guy Marine SCV all into me as Protoss, and I did a 1-gate expand and held.
Really?
Yeah. And he did it twice and then just 1G'd out, and I was like, oh, that felt amazing. But yeah, I hate those all-ins. So that's what you could have done, right? 38 drones. You're going to just go ahead and say, I'm pretty sure it's a Marine tank. Let's drop a Baneling nest. Let's spam out some speedlings. I'm going to keep myself at 38 to 40 drones because I know that is more than what 30 SCVs and 2 mules can mine. Good enough. And then you're just spamming out speedlings, you're spamming out banelings, and you're waiting for the push to occur, or waiting for him to take this delayed natural, at which point you'll take your 3rd and start droning again. Instead, let's see where you drone up to, and just kind of say, that could have been Zerglings, that could have been Zerglings, that could have been Zerglings. 49, 51, 53.
53.
All right. So, 53, what is that, about 15? That's 30 Zerglings you were missing. So,
oh yeah, I would have done it.
Yeah. 3 tanks, and 13 Marines versus 2 Spine Crawlers, 30 Zerglings, almost 40 Zerglings, and 4 Roaches. And then your Queens, you would have cleaned up pretty handily. It depends on his Hellion micro. I would have liked to have seen a Baneling nest. I would have liked to see some of these Banelings morphed into Zerglings, or Zerglings morphed into Banelings, and I would have liked to have not seen 580 minerals floating. But really, just if those drones were Zerglings, you would have cleaned up.
I find like I'm often not getting my Baneling nest up early enough. I mean, do you just drop that pretty much every time, like when the Roach Warren goes down, or I mean, you know, do you wait to see what he's doing, or I mean, because it seems like you're pretty much always going to need Banelings no matter what, right?
You are,
unless he's going all air.
Yeah,
right?
and I mean, it depends on your style. I mean, you could be, you know, Destiny and Festerling the entire game, but I find, yeah, Banelings are going to be more stable. Whether to get the Baneling nest before the lair or after the lair is contingent entirely on what he does with his factory. So let's say, in this case, right, you run that Zergling up at that 7 to 8 minute mark, you see a barracks with a reactor. Baneling nest goes down. There's no other option. Like, that should be priority number 1. If you only have 50 gas and you have the choice between waiting for another 50 and starting the lair or dropping the Baneling nest, I'd rather you drop the Baneling nest, because there's a reactor on a barracks. Vice versa, if you show up, you see a factory with a reactor, you see another factory behind it with a tech lab, you probably won't need a Baneling nest until your lair's done, because Banelings won't do anything to Blue Flame Hellions until they have speed. So you're not going to be morphing Banelings anyways against Blue Flame Hellion Siege Tank, which is probably what he's going for. Or Blue Flame Hellion Thor. But anytime he's making Marines, yes, Baneling nest before lair. Until Master League, when you can start to make smaller distinctions. So yeah, I mean, that really was all it was. How to cut drones? There you have it. It's just all about these missed scouting timings that you have. And then from there, again, it's all just kind of, it wouldn't have happened differently, or it would have happened differently with scouting. You wouldn't have lost all these drones, you wouldn't have had to pull, you would have counterattacked and denied his natural, hopefully. So the entire game would have played out differently, because had you cut at the right time, had you scouted at the right time, you would have absolutely crushed his push.
Right.
So.
And that would have been, yeah. Right.
Yeah, that would have been game.
And that would have been ahead, and that would have been it.
Yeah. You would have seen the low ground command center then, you would have forced it to lift off while taking your third. He would have then had to turtle on one base, pull his command center back if he wants to drop mules, eventually push your roaches and lings out with the siege tanks, and then he takes his natural when your third is already saturated. You know, at that point the game is over.
Right. Okay.
Alright, so, what else? I know we had a couple more in there.
Let's see, let me look.
Was another Protoss Death Ball? No, that one's older. That's November.
Early Phoenix Harass. Actually, that's a good one.
Yeah, this is the only one I haven't watched, so...
The Mass Void Raid one is just terrible. It's just terrible.
That one I did watch.
Oh, God.
That one made me laugh a little, so that's good at least.
I think I had 3,000 minerals, 8,000 minerals at one point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was sitting there like, put it all in Queens or something.
I know.
You know, he loses if that's 8,000 minerals worth of Queens. I don't care what it is. Okay. Failed Cannon Rush. Looks good. I'm not sure what he was expecting to accomplish with that positioning, but it worked out. Oh, okay. Be aware of where his probe is. And actually, I'm going to switch over to your view to see if you spotted that. Because your Zerglings ran right by his probe, and then just kind of left it there. Or maybe he turned around.
Where are you? 5 minutes?
Yeah, I'm going to just rewind a bit and check what happened there. Okay. So at this point, his probe runs out, and that's the point I get a little bit suspicious, because his probe just leaves, right? So that's the point I'm going to go ahead and put my Zerglings on A move as they're moving out. And remember, by default, you want your Zerglings to be rallied when they're an egg. The same applies to Protoss. So you're going to have the Zerglings rallied, and you're just going to switch one of them to A move, or both of them to A move, while they move out to his base. And instead, they ran right past his probe, and I'm really hoping you catch that. Nope, you run past it and leave. You even could see the glow of the probe holding minerals. I hope that doesn't come back to bite you. Let's see what happens. But yeah, you literally ran right past it, so when they move would have caught that.
Right.
Proxy pylon goes up, everything's looking good on your end, you get a double expand off versus this Forge FE. And the next thing I'm checking again is the metabolic. Okay, good, it's there. Alright. Your Overlord scout timing is really, really good for being against Forge FE. His Stargate positioning is phenomenal, unfortunately. And this is something that can help you a bit in all your games. Is, you know, for example, this Overlord, actually, there was nothing to kill it now that I look at it. So really, you just kind of flew into a photon cannon and died.
Sorry, what minute are you? Where are you?
9 minutes.
9 minutes.
Just watch the pathing on this Overlord. Now, first off, the first thing I'm going to address is never scout with an Overlord what you can scout with a Zergling. So the Zerglings can see everything at the front of his base. So the pathing on this Overlord already should be middle of his base, or between his two bases, then up to the back of his main. Because everything else can be scouted with the Zergling. But instead, the other big thing that's kind of a red flag is he's still making Zealots, and you just go, hey, I'm going to give you an Overlord kill. And you fly your Overlord at his cannon.
Yeah, that's sad.
Yeah. Make sure you're managing that Overlord very closely. It needs to be something you're watching, clicking on buildings, microing to see exactly where it could be. If you see a rogue pylon off in the corner, then go ahead and just beeline that Overlord over to that rogue pylon. Even if it doesn't show anything, I'd rather you cover your bases, you know? Because you have a limited amount of time before a Stalker comes out and kills that Overlord. And so it needs to be something you're paying very close attention to capitalize on that as much as possible. Because that 100 minerals needs to be paid for with information.
Right.
And in this case, that 100 minerals got you 2 gateways, a Cybercore, a Forge, and a Nexus. Pretty much everything you already knew.
Right.
Whereas had you known to go to the main, and had you not suicided on the cannon, that 100 minerals would have gotten you 2 starports, 3 gateways, assuming you didn't wait for the Overlord to die.